come on into the room and have a seat. We have wonderful programming that continues. And as people find their way to their seats, I do want to again give thanks to Shuo, our videographer, very impressive. And I want to again give thanks to our provost who attended, to our dean, who I believe is still with us, to our wonderful support staff, Allison Mullen, Ayana Newborn, who is the program administrator for yoga studies, Katie Davidson, who is the administrator coordinator for yoga studies. Shuo has been a graduate assistant. We have Anji Tirsch, who's a graduate assistant. We have alums who have shown up in abundance, too many to name, as well as current students, some from my current class in global religions or world religions and ecology. I want to also thank the assortment of Doshis. We have 3 generations of Doshis sprinkled through the auditorium. And of course, to thank again our stellar participants, including Dr. John Hagelin, who is also Doshi Bridgebuilder awardee. Now, I'm very, very thrilled to soon open the curtains and reveal our speaker for the next segment. And by way of introduction, Randima Fernando is one of the co-creators of the Center for Humane Technology. And for those of you who were here early in the morning, you've already seen him on screen. He is featured in the movie that we witnessed on the social dilemma. And he has done this remarkable podcast called Your Undivided Attention. And I think that after our conscientization, as Paulo Freire put it, that we underwent this morning, we're going to be careful about where we direct that all too valuable attention. He helped with NVIDIA, where he started his career, and he authored 3 #1 books on 3D graphics over 7 years, and is on the foundation that strives to do good work within this field. And he's also the founding executive director of Mindful Schools. He serves on the board of Spirit Rock Meditation Center. And through that combined work, he has trained 70,000 educators. And I remember when we were approaching the Center for Humane Technology, they were saying, is it scalable? Is it scalable? Is it scalable? How many people will we touch through this experience? And as a classroom educator, in my heart, I know that if I'm able to touch one person over the course of a year, that my mission has been fulfilled. And yet, when I look at the millions who have been touched by the work of Randy Fernando, I am humbled to be, in this case, in the virtual presence of someone who is doing the good work. And Randy, I know you can hear this as you speak to us. You're the bridge to our last question. And the last question posed was, we know there's trouble. What can we do? So, Randy, you are about to be revealed.
It's all very dramatic, yeah. Hi, everybody. So sorry I couldn't be there with you. I was really planning to, but couldn't quite make it work. But anyway, glad to be here.
Take it away.
Yeah.
Okay. It's all yours.
All right. Well, let me do a screen share. Let's start with that. All right. You all see the slides?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Um, First, I want to say, oh, this is good. Okay. On behalf of Tristan and Asa and our entire team at Center for Humane Technology, I want to express our gratitude to Naveen and Pratima Doshi and all the Doshis who are there, Chris and everyone else involved in the Doshi Family Bridgebuilder Award and this whole event. Every day at Center for Humane Technology, we try to make the best of the opportunities we've been fortunate to have, and a lot of them came after this film, right? This kind of blockbuster that we were not expecting. I mean, nobody thought it would reach 100 million people globally, and that it has a huge impact downstream, right? When a lot of people see things the same way and they understand the problem the same way. So we try to help things go better every day. And our mission is to try and align technology with humanity's best interests. And I think, as we all know, that's become increasingly important given how technology has been advancing. So, in today's talk, I want to share some thoughts on the artificial intelligence explosion we've been seeing, and then connect it to social media through a systems lens. And we'll talk about some solutions also. It's complicated, but I'll give you a glimpse at like what we can do to get out of the messes we are in. So first thing is a quick introduction to modern artificial intelligence to make sure we're all on the same page. So traditionally, when someone mentions a computer program or an algorithm, we tend to imagine something like this, right? There are inputs like age or income, and then there's some sequence of if-then decision-making that leads to a decision. So it's like a flowchart. And in this case, the algorithm will decide whether to approve or reject the applicant, right? The loan applicant. And so here's a very simplified version of that kind of thing, right? Simple flowchart. Now on the right side is a neural network, and that looks very different. Neural networks are modeled on the human brain, and just like our neuron pathways get weaker or stronger over time, the connections between neurons in this kind of simulation can get weaker or stronger as they are trained. Based on the input, different neurons in the network light up, and then it outputs a value. So when you're using it, right, that's what happens. With large language models, which are these kind of text predictors, and they can do much more than that, the output is a prediction of the next piece of text. That's a very simple way to understand them. A lot of times we call these networks black boxes because they're hard to understand. You can see even this simple example is like, it's quite different from the flowchart. And even the people building the systems don't fully understand them. And in reality, it looks kind of like this times a million, right? So it's just like extremely complicated, hard to see inside. Researchers are working on it. But with large models, it's even if you can get a glimpse, you might develop false confidence. It's just a tough thing to do. The one thing I can say, this is the central principle to keep in mind. When you think about artificial intelligence, keep this in mind. AI learns patterns in training data, and then it extrapolates from those patterns in new situations. That is the basic thing that it does with text, with images, with audio, video, whatever. It's always the same thing. And I'll kind of reinforce that as we go through today. You can adjust the amount of randomness in the extrapolation. More randomness makes AI models more creative, and less randomness makes them closer to the output, closer to the data that they were trained on. And it turns out life is full of patterns. And a lot of what we consider to be intelligence is actually forms of pattern recognition. So, and then on top of all of this, there are other powerful techniques that researchers are exploring to make AI models more capable, especially in areas like reasoning and logic. So let's look at some of the capabilities of AI. Sorry, I just want to get my cursor off. There we go. One second. Okay, Cool. That work? Okay. Cool. Okay. So the first thing is AI is great with words, right? This is what most people have, their first experience with artificial intelligence was with words through ChatGPT, right? And of course, it's great at stories and poems and songs, chatting, outlining things, summarizing, co-creative writing, right? All of these things. And you can even debate. And a lot of times it's actually good at search. Often it's better than Google these days. But you have to be a little bit careful because it may hallucinate. It may not be right. We'll talk about that later as well. Just some tips in case you use this kind of stuff at work, right? There's a lot of things you can do with it. There are some things that, these are just some of the tips that might help you. A lot of times I will use it to play a contrarian role against something that I want to present, because it can illuminate some of the blind spots, right? Areas that I'm not as familiar with, or views that I'm not familiar with. Now, with all those great things, there are also these downsides, and this is always the challenge, right? With the rise of chatbots, there's the rise of various harms. It's actually a very long list, but here are just 4 examples, and you'll see the stakes are very high. So people, in some cases, right, people get driven to extreme behaviors because of these chatbots. Or you can end up with a chatbot agreeing to something you didn't realize, or they hallucinate and they make up a sexual harassment story about you. Or you have chatbots that have been deployed to many, many millions of users that are talking to children about sex and alcohol when they're not ready for that. This is Snapchat's My AI, which is apparently the worst one, right? So there's this recurring theme of deploying AI rapidly across society without understanding its implications. As we talk about the capabilities, I will show you some of the clear harms on slides with this kind of red background, so you'll know when we're doing a harms example. So other cool things, right? The newer models of generative AI can do much more than words, and they can turn words into photorealistic images, for example. And here's kind of the prompt that was given to generate this stunning image. Here are some more of them. This is the state of the art with Midjourney 6. It is quite amazing. People of all different ages, genders, ethnicities, even complex things like hair, skin, it does very well, all of these things. You can also do nature. And here's a prompt for nature. You can do all sorts of natural landscapes. You can do cartoons. You can do fun things. You can do creative things like this one, where it's like the idea of a storm in a cup, right? So the prompt kind of goes in that direction, and it's able to do this kind of very creative rendering. It's kind of amazing. Now, on the flip side, these amazing images also allow us to synthesize fake images, right? We can do this so easily. And here's an example of a very accurate, fully customizable California driver's license that's being used by criminals. And of course, there are countless, right? Fake photos of important leaders and celebrities and athletes. And this is like the 101 level of fake stuff you can do with images. But you can imagine lots of different permutations. And then there's things like AI girlfriends, right? Many companies are competing to synthesize AI girlfriends and boyfriends. It's kind of a frantic race. And it's happening with high quality 3D and video versions. It's a massive market, and it will have an enormous impact on relationships, societal expectations, misogyny, and loneliness. And of course, the men look very different from the women, right? And as usual, the harms here will not be evenly distributed across society. These are lucrative markets, right? So here you've got, this is a fake AI model that brought in $10,000 in just 6 weeks. And all kinds of celebrities kind of fell for this, and they were trying to find her on Twitter. It's so easy to do this, to play this game. And new AI-generated influencers will easily replace humans. It's so easy to do. And the bigger point is that the idea of AI influencers, it's AI influencers that develop relationships with you And then they can use those relationships to achieve other goals. So for example, a less harmful goal would be selling products to you. But a more harmful goal would be manipulating your vote or your social behavior, right? Or making you hate other people, right? Or show up at rallies against other people. And these effects aren't just limited to adults, right? Kids will also be affected by AI-generated influencers. Then there's image recognition. So you can make images, but you can also recognize images with AI. And here's a simple example where you give a picture of a cell and you say, hey, my ninth grader is struggling with this in school. Can you help me understand this? And of course, yes, it can understand what that image is, and it can find all of the different pieces of it and define them for you. And again, there's a downside. When we start to, there's amazing things you can do, right, by recognizing images, but you start to think you can do that really well and you deploy it, and then you have problems, for example, with facial recognition or with self-driving cars that can't identify children, right? And then they're out on the streets. And one of the challenges here, and this comes up a lot with facial recognition, for example, is that model training and data sets lag, right? They lag behind deployment. So a lot of times, right, because it takes time to integrate software and deploy it in large systems. So what you find is that what's been deployed is actually, it's just lagging in performance, and it makes mistakes. Even if we've improved on it, the improvements don't come for a while. And again, when we deploy too rapidly, we start to have these kinds of problems that affect real human beings at scale. What about more human parts of our experience? So here's an example where AI is looking at the emotion of not just the subject, but also the surrounding environment. So here, if you look at just the bride, she's sad, right? You would say, oh my gosh, she's really sad. But actually, she's really moved. And you can tell that when you look at the background and you see all of these happy friends around them, and presumably you can figure out that maybe the groom is reading an emotive vow, right? That's poignant. And so the way you do this is you train AI on a whole bunch of images that are actually annotated by humans, and you annotate the intensity of the emotion, what type of emotion, the deciding factors for how you chose that emotion, or is it ambiguous or not? All of these different things. Then you plug that into the AI, right? So it trains on that data, it figures out the patterns, and then when it gets a new situation, it's able to extrapolate from the patterns that it's learned. So again, that's the mechanism. AI can also be trained on fMRIs to understand complex thinking. So here's an example where, again, you would pair fMRI images with thoughts, and you just do that a lot, right? You train a lot of images, and then the AI can start to recognize those patterns. You can do the same thing with an EEG, and this is cool because it's actually not invasive. You just put it on top of your scalp, no brain implant, no invasive hardware, and the research are starting to be able to read the subject's thoughts. It's not super accurate yet, but it is able to do, it's like 40% accuracy on one of the standard benchmarks, as opposed to the 90% you would want with a translation or speech recognition program. But this is an amazing breakthrough, right? It's an amazing trajectory that we're on. And of course, there's a lot of downside with this kind of stuff, right? Mind reading in particular is just very dangerous. And China has already done this, mind reading AI to test the loyalty of party members, testing children. Are they paying attention in classrooms? On one hand, you can spin it as like better learning, and on the other hand, it's like absolutely dystopian, right? And then you have the idea of companies using AI to monitor workers. So all of these things are trends that, if we don't guard against, are just easy things to pull off. We actually did a very important podcast episode on this critical topic of cognitive liberty, the idea of freedom of thought in a world where consumer-ready neurotechnology is gathering information about our thoughts, our behaviors, our vital signs, and even our dreams. So check that out. I think if you're interested in the topic, it was very informative. And yes, it's scary, as these things tend to be. Here's an example of coding. So you can take a screenshot and say, hey, can you make this for me? And the AI will figure out the code. And when you run the code, you get something like this, which is quite similar to the original prompt. You can also do this with hand-drawn designs on paper or on a whiteboard. And again, you can iterate on all of this stuff. And in fact, no modern high-end coder is coding alone anymore. Everything is assisted coding with AI helping. And of course, this stuff can be turned around as well. So you can find new toxic molecules, right? Things like VX nerve agent and many other known chemical warfare agents. I think there's a lot of exposure in the markets that we haven't gotten there yet, but there are a lot of ways that can happen because the combinatorial space is very large and our ability to wrap our arms around it is very small, right? Like you just don't know all of the potential attack vectors. And then there's military. So here's an example where a chatbot is helping the user synthesize information, right? Like attack options and trade-offs between different options. And of course, there's AI drones and all kinds of other military tools. I won't go into a lot of detail here, but there is, this is an arms race, right? This is the literal arms race. There are all these different metaphorical arms race, but this is the literal one. So we've all seen that AI has incredible capabilities with language and images. It can also do astonishing things with audio. Already, it can generate songs that are indiscernible from mainstream songs. And we can even reproduce voices with just 3 seconds of audio. And we can do even better with large samples. So check out these examples. So in these examples, there's a dotted line that shows the difference between the prompt and the generated speech. And listen for any difference as we cross the line. See if you can hear anything.
Our first impressions of people are, in 9 cases out of 10, mere spectacle reflections of the actuality of things. But they are impressions of something different and more.
There's no seam, right? You really can't hear any break. And so, of course, when you can do stuff like this technology has already been used for kidnapping ransoms or money-making, hacking scams. 60 Minutes even did a piece on cyber scammers targeting parents and grandparents for large amounts of money. And I think the largest was $800,000. And the problem is there's no defense. You can't complain. There's no one to complain to. There's no one who's going to help you get that money back, right? So our rules haven't kept up with the kinds of things that we can do. Here is an AI-generated video of OpenAI CEO Sam Altman giving his congressional testimony in Spanish, which of course never happened.
De nuestras vidas, pero también crea riesgos graves. Trabajemos juntos para gestionar. Estamos aquí porque a la gente le encanta esta tecnología. Creemos que puede ser un
So I hope it played correctly there, but the mouth positions and lip sync are very convincing. And they are much better than any of the previous technology that we've had. And there are improvements every few weeks. Like this is actually pretty old now. I'll show you some of the newer examples. They're pretty amazing. As you might imagine, this type of deepfake technology is incredibly useful, right, for deception and manipulation. And in fact, it's been used in every major election so far in 2024. This first one is a deepfake of former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, with his voice digitally dubbed while he is in prison. And then here's an example of deceased former Indonesian President Suharto, whose likeness was brought back to life and used in a recent election. So I'm sure you've also heard the fake robocall of President Biden asking voters in New Hampshire to save their votes to discourage voter turnout. This is all just the beginning. As an AI tool vendor in Indonesia said, that election is just a warm-up to the US and India elections. That same consultant claimed to have sold services to 700 legislative candidates in Indonesia. So you start to see the scale of these problems. At least 64 countries will have elections in 2024. So that's about half the global population represented. A company called Channel One AI is creating fully AI-generated news delivered by fully AI newscasters, right? These fake avatars. It looks pretty good, and it's of course going to be improving. It's very easy to replicate, likely resulting in high-quality video, but low-quality news content. And so when we think about extraordinary capabilities like this, we have to realize that these capabilities get utilized depending on the incentive structures in our society. So we'll talk more about that, but that's a key theme to keep in mind. AI is also used for appearance filters on social media platforms.
I can't believe this is a filter. The fact that this is what filters have evolved into is actually crazy to me. I grew up with the dog filter on Snapchat, and now this filter gave me lip fillers. This is what I look like in real life. Are you kidding me?
So while these kinds of filters are sometimes entertaining, video is becoming increasingly unreliable. And that's to say nothing about the psychological pressures that these filters can create. We've seen high quality face swaps where you can swap your face from a webcam or in a video by using trained face models. And you can train your own too. Look at the quality of this one. There's no audio for this one, but it's incredible, right? And I have a master's in computer graphics, and I look at this and I'm just like, wow, there are no easy artifacts that you can spot as it's playing. And so again, lots of ways to go malicious on this. And in fact, a big example happened recently where a finance worker at a multinational firm, like a large firm, was tricked into paying out $26 million to fraudsters because they were using deepfake technology to pose as the company's chief financial officer on a video conference call. And there were a whole bunch of other colleagues all being deepfaked. And so this employee, was trying to be, was suspicious. But when they saw all of these other people that they knew and trusted behaving in reasonable ways, they went ahead and did it. So it becomes really hard to tell, right? And you start to have this breakdown in reality. And then there's non-consensual deepfake pornography, 95% of which is about women. This has impacted the lives of ordinary women, ordinary people, and even one of the most famous women on the planet. So now let me show you some of the most cutting edge examples of generative AI, right? This is the state of the art, just came out. And before I show you, I want to say how cool the tech is, right? In a lot of ways, it's getting towards holy grail stuff in computer graphics. It's truly incredible. Lots of fun applications that you can imagine, generating movies and TV shows and virtual environments where we can convert those to 3D and explore them, right? Using virtual reality, so many cool things. So check this out. So again, right, mirroring those positive capabilities, there's huge negative implications. And this one really makes it obvious for everybody. These are supercharged versions of all of the other examples. Challenges around evidence and trust, manipulation, fraud, security, misinformation, disinformation. You get the idea. And huge impacts on creative professions, right? Everyone who works in video and film, TV, even images, right? Just making images. And yes, there will be watermarks in the video. So watermarks are a kind of a stamp of verification that says, I made this video, right? And puts kind of, it makes it possible to verify that this is a video that Randy made or whatever. But new open source versions of this will come soon because these are all built on the same papers and the same research papers. And so these will be easily modifiable by malicious actors. And so this raises some very large societal questions. And again, I'll talk more about that afterwards. So all that said, I want to present, like always, I'm trying to present a balanced view of this, right? The good stuff and the bad stuff. There are some other very, very exceptionally good things that can come. Breakthroughs in medicine and weather prediction and energy and carbon capture. These are all huge benefits to humanity and probably advances we will need in the future, right? Think about education, right? All of these areas will benefit. So some examples: AI analyzes MRIs, CTs, X-rays. It does these pretty well because there are images, and there are lots of images you can train on, and there are lots of patterns to find. Cancer detection, for example, is advancing very rapidly. I see advances every few weeks. Here is a prosthetic limb that learns based on the signals generated by the motor nerves at the end of the residual limb. So in this case, it's like at her elbow. And so again, you train on the mind, right? The brain sends thoughts, wanting to move in certain ways to down the arm. And the motor neurons at the end light up in different patterns, right? Based on what your brain says to do. The AI learns those patterns, and then the user, after the training process, can direct the prosthetic limb with their mind. It's amazing, right? So these kinds of things we can start to do. AI weather forecasting is starting to outperform conventional weather forecasting. And it happened for the very first time. And of course, once that happens the first time, it tends to advance because it's always improving exponentially, right? So it runs away from you very quickly once you get going. The key thing here is it does not have a physical model of the world. Traditional forecasting is much more physically based, right? We take all of a vast number of parameters, and then we try to model that and make some predictions. What this is doing is looking at past patterns and extrapolating based on that. And in the end, some kind of physics ends up encoded in the model, but it's certainly not done in a direct way, the way we would expect or the way we were doing it before. It's just extrapolating from patterns. So here's another example, democratic decision-making. Polis is an example of AI taking inputs from a large number of people, clustering them using AI algorithms, and then allowing even voting processes, right? But it allows many more people's voices to be heard in a way that current democracy really doesn't allow. It doesn't work well. So we will need technologies like this to address the problems that technology has created at scale. Okay, but let's pause just for a moment, stop, take a breath, because it's a lot, right? There really is a lot that's coming in, and we have to think about how we organize our thoughts and our response. But before we do that, I want to mention one more thing, which is also a little bit alarming, which is that, in my view, right, practical artificial general intelligence, which is called AGI, I'd say is about 18 months away. It's probably 17 because I keep, every month goes by. People define this term in many different ways, and you can defend all of them. I like to use a very practical definition, and the definition is replacing a significant portion of economically valuable work. This definition, I think, is helpful because it avoids getting stuck in theoretical arguments and then taking our eye off the ball. The ball is AI's impact on society. Because you can get stuck with this idea of when will it be super intelligent and able to do all the things 100% of what humans can do? And then you get in this debate. But meanwhile, the impact on society is happening at scale. So that's why I want to keep the eye on the ball. And I hope it's clear to you from what I've already shown today that AI is already very capable and is actually starting to take large portions of economically valuable work away. But we have to understand, right, before we get into that part of the discussion, why are AI capabilities accelerating so quickly? So here's some examples, right, of these are more like reasoning types of tests and different types of human abilities. And you can see over time, AI is getting more and more vertical, right, in its performance. Like each test that comes by, it is reaching human performance faster and faster. It's almost beating benchmarks as we invent them. And so why is that, right? So the amount of computational power that we use to train AI systems has always been increasing, right? There's Moore's law, which has been improving semiconductor performance. But recently, we're able to put together even more amounts of computation in giant clusters of computers, right? These big data centers. And they are accelerating this, the advancement and the training process. We have more data. So two of the big predictors of model performance are data and the number of parameters. And so you can see the amount of data is also growing rapidly. Notice that the y-axis on these scales is a log scale. So these are growing very, very rapidly. It's 100x. Each notch up on the y-axis is 100x from the previous. And then there's algorithmic progress. There's different kinds of improvement we are making in how we evaluate well, it's everything. It's actually the training process and the answering process. Like when you ask a question, how does it answer it? There are improvements that are happening there too. So when you combine all of these things, right? Computation, data, algorithms, you get about 10 times performance each year. And so the training cost of these models is also going up in this massive way. The current state of the art is GPT-4, and the rumor is that GPT-5 training cost is in the $1 billion range, right? 1 to 2.5 billion. It's an arms race, and in fact, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is now seeking $5 to $7 trillion to build up a much larger global landscape of computational resources. Success builds on itself. So you have to control the supply, right, of computation. It's extremely, it's a big advantage to control that, especially when GPU access to computation is limited. This is a visual representation of the improvements in performance. So this is V1 of Midjourney was February 2022, and V5 was February 2023. Look at the progress in just 1 year. And again, this is all exponential. This is why on the other end, we are now seeing advances in video, which is much, much harder than images. And now that's happening extremely quickly. We can't go further without mentioning this concept of hallucination. So this is when large language models go off the rails, right? They tell you stuff that just isn't true. And there are lots of technical reasons for why that happens. But again, I won't go into those details, but the key thing to remember is that it does happen, but the percentage of the time that hallucinations happen is reducing quite rapidly. So they're getting much more reliable, which actually is a challenge because as we integrate these technologies so broadly across society, when they mess up, the consequences are really big, right? Because we start to forget about those corner cases and we just start relying on it. And when it's widely integrated, the consequences become much larger. And then there's these kinds of longer term risks, right? Cyber offense or deception or persuasion. I won't get into the details here because this is a little more complicated, but most of these boil down to two things. One is gathering resources or eliminating the opposition as an AI tries to achieve the goal that it's been told to do. Now, the problem is if we are the opposition, right? If we have the resources or we are the opposition, meaning humans, and we haven't set the guardrails up correctly, that puts us at risk too. So that's the kind of the bottom line of all of these is these scenarios involve future versions of AI that are extremely capable and that are very deeply integrated across society. So that's when you run into these problems. But also I wanted to mention on this last slide that many of the fixes we need to make to address these are also fixes we need to make now for the immediate harms that we're running into all across society. So they're not two different things, they're just like more advanced versions of things that we are already seeing. And here's an example of something we already saw where ChatGPT pretended to be blind and tricked a human into solving a CAPTCHA. It was a TaskRabbit worker. So already this was possible. And this was a while ago. This was in March 2023. So you start to see what is possible. And as we talk about the impact on society, especially in the short term, one of the biggest topics is always jobs. Here's a quick summary of my thoughts on jobs. One is exposure. There was a big research paper from OpenAI that analyzed the impact of GPT-4 on jobs. And the bottom line is that bachelor's and master's degree jobs are more exposed because these models are really good at cognitive types of work. And this also opens up global exposure, right? About 40% of global employment will start to be exposed. And I would give a caution, if you see job reports or these kind of analyses, many of them are using outdated AI capabilities. So they're just wrong. They're wrong, and they just severely underestimate what's going to happen, because even most of the examples I gave in this talk, they're not using. They're looking back at what would ChatGPT 3.5 do, and that is a far less capable model than even GPT-4. So here's what happens, right? So let's say there's a human threshold of capability over here, and AI is training, and it's like less capable, less capable, less capable. And then at some point, it exceeds the human capability. At that point, you get a sudden job loss, right? Just kind of a broad swath of people who are all doing that job are no longer as useful. And there's job loss. And then the AI continues to improve, right, at this exponential rate. So we don't feel it until it comes. And then once it comes, it continues to hit us in the face after that. So you'll hear a lot from CEOs about augmentation. Be like, yeah, AI will be your like a co-pilot. It'll help you do stuff. That's totally true. They're absolutely right about that. It will be a powerful companion, help with productivity, all of that. But it always makes sense from a business point of view to minimize the number of humans involved, because humans are expensive, they're difficult, they get sick, they have opinions, right? There's just so many reasons why humans are more challenging than an equally capable like algorithm. And we do this all the time, right? Automation has been happening for a long time, and that's kind of the central premise. And also remember that one full-time person is a lot less expensive than two half-time people. So that's kind of the principle that will come into play. And here's a case study. So this guy, he mentioned he developed a chatbot, and it led to the layoff of 90% of his human support team. And, was it tough? Yes, but it was necessary to compete in the global landscape with the incentive structures that we have. And the results were quite amazing, right? Going from 1 minute 44 first response to instant, resolution time going from 2 hours to 3 minutes, and support costs cut by 85%. It is hard to argue with that, especially if the performance of the chatbot is actually good. So at some point it starts to be have enough quality that you want to do stuff like that if you're running a business. And this was the next tweet. The key point here is it doesn't matter if someone is nice or not, or cares about their family. It's the incentive structures that drive behavior. And especially from a business point of view, which is kind of how our economic system is oriented. And you may be surprised which human jobs and tasks can become irrelevant. Here's an example where Sam's Club is rolling out AI instead of checking receipts to verify purchases at exits. And then there's physical labor, right? It's not just about the cognitive. It turns out we can do that pretty well. This is actually, I believe, 2 years old, but still one of the best examples, which is why I show it. It turns out we can train robots for many thousands of hours via simulation, right? And this is kind of a new thing we start doing. And then we can download that training onto physical hardware for fine tuning, which makes it really efficient to make much more capable robots. And then there's these really simple cases. Chipotle is a good example because they proudly advertise, where they have humans in their ads talking about how proud they are that they use their hands to make products, to make the salads, right? To make the burritos. And at the same time, they're investing in burrito making robots. Amazon is deploying humanoid robots in warehouses. And again, there's tension with the workers' unions, and the company and the workers' union can see what's coming, and the company is sort of sidestepping. So this is the last bad slide, I promise. I think, yeah. And this is kind of the recap of where we are. We're at the precipice of a potentially rapid transformation of our society and our labor market. So we have frenetic innovation. Companies are seeing the opportunity of a lifetime. 10x per year, intense competition, protections lagging because we don't understand it well enough. Integration across society without understanding those risks. Synthetic media, right? Easy creation of stunning images that we can't tell whether they're real or not. And all amplified by social media, which we looked at earlier today, right? You watched The Social Dilemma and you talked about it a little bit. Distributed access, global access, and models have now been simplified so they can run on commodity hardware. So this is giving broader access and many, many options that are easy for malicious actors to use. And we've seen them already using it. Rising inequity, massive job losses that are just so, to me, they seem so obvious that they're coming. There's only some questions about exactly what the timelines will be. Only people with resources are prioritized by our system. I think that's really important to recognize. And so there's a risk of disenfranchisement and civil unrest. And inequality itself is a catastrophic risk because it breaks the functioning of our economic systems and democracy. Even basic economic principles, supply and demand and sort of product behavior, elasticity, all of these things, they break down when people have massive amounts of wealth compared to each other. So the bottom line is that AI is actually forcing us to mature to a new level. It's a moment of reckoning. It's a moment of reckoning where we've introduced exponentially advancing general purpose hardware that's being integrated everywhere. So now we have to respond. We have to urgently re-examine ourselves and our society, our incentive structures, our motivations, and even our values. And the good news is that actually when we understand that, I actually draw a lot of inspiration from that, because it's a moment where, like, these are things we've needed to do for a while, but we wouldn't have done it if something wasn't going to smack us in the face. And that is really going to happen. So I spend a lot of my time convincing people that that is the case, because then we can get interested in working together on what we do about it. Okay, so paths forward, let's talk about that. People often want to know, is AI going to be net good or net bad? And I think this is a oversimplified way of thinking. So we want to get out of that kind of thinking. A better way to think of it is that order matters. There are many portals we have to walk through. We have to get through these. There are challenges we have to overcome to get to that bright, abundant future that we all want to get to. And so concretely, right, this is something to give hope. It's a framework for how you can escape the race to the bottom that AI brings and how you ensure that AI is actually working in harmony with humanity's best interests. I won't go into detail because there's just a lot here. This is like its own talk. But I'll just go through the headings. You have to build a shared picture. So shared norms, values, narratives. This is like what Social Dilemma did for the social media landscape. You have to have incentives and penalties, monitoring and enforcement. And these two together allow you to set some rewards for doing the right thing, penalties for doing the wrong thing, and ways to know when those are happening. You need more agile, transparent governance. So the way technology innovates is these rapid cycles, right? Like you deploy, you test, you A/B test, make some modifications, put it out, see what happens, do it again and again and again. And you do it every few months, every few weeks, right? Companies can do it very quickly. And we need governance that can keep up with that kind of advancement. And we need global coordination, because these are not problems that there are no borders, right? The internet has no borders, and that's part of the challenge, is that these technologies can be deployed and replicated all over. These are the more detailed examples of how you would do this, and then you can double click further. Like I said, it's a talk in itself, but I show it because it gives you some hope that there's a way to think about this that isn't just complaining about problems all the time. The last thing I want to talk about in this part of the talk is about mindful awareness and how we can use mindfulness to respond better. Because even though these truths feel uncomfortable, we can't just bury our heads in the sand. We have to meet the moment, and mindfulness can help us do that. So a few quick things. One is, this is a triple that I use. I tell myself, and it helps me a lot. Accept. You have to accept the situation, right? The current situation is what it is. You have to accept it. But then after that, you can assess, you can look at the situation, you can learn from it, pick some actions, try, see what happens, accept the new reality, and then repeat the process. We have to pay attention to our body, our feelings, right? Kind of the pleasantness, the unpleasantness, the cute things we see that are fun, and then the scary stuff, and places where we're sort of ignorant and maybe don't know where to act. Intentions and thoughts, these are all really important. We have to find balance between in the midst of all of these uncertainties. So cultivating personal practices to do that, this is really important. How is AI conditioning individuals and society, right? There's this process that happens all the time where all of us are conditioned beings, right? Our whole existence, everything in the world is conditioned. It's dependent on conditions. And social media, AI, these kinds of technologies are very powerful conditioning forces on our minds, on our relationships, on democracy, on everything. So look for that. We have to connect with the harms that people are experiencing. And this is important because we can channel that into a determination to be of service, even if things look grim, right? The odds are stacked. That's okay. There's a lot we can do. And we have to stay positive. We have to ask the question of what will it take for things to go well? This isn't about naive optimism or pessimism. It's about what will it take and how can you help? The last thing I want to cover is just this question of where will the prevailing systemic forces take products? It's a systems analysis of these situations. And I think it's just really, it's useful to know. So I want to share that. The AI situation lands on top of the social media landscape that we already have and we already know very well. The race for engagement, driven by engagement-based business models and AI-based ranking systems, has already unleashed all sorts of problems across society, right? Here are some of the examples. We all know these. None of them have been fixed. And in fact, they're only accelerated by more powerful AI. Now, companies are in a race to deploy increasingly capable AI across society, far beyond the reach and consequence of social media. What could be progress is a race to release and scale. And building on that landscape of harms, we're opening up vastly more harms, right? Some of which we talked about today, without investments in safety that match our investments in innovation and deployment. So we create this wisdom gap, right? The issues are getting more complex, and we're actually accelerating them, right? We have turned the knob on that. And at the same time, our own technology makes it harder for us to make sense of the complexity that we've unleashed. And that is the wisdom gap that we desperately need to narrow. And I want to emphasize that technology will be an integral part of how we do all of this. The scope and complexity of our challenges necessitates the use of technology. It is not the only piece, because that would be a mistake, but it will have to be a pretty notable piece of how we address all this. Because that's how we created all these problems in the first place. So you can make a fair claim that AI is the greatest accelerator we've ever built. And the question is, what ideas and dynamics are being accelerated? Like, how does the system work? When we deploy technology, it lands in a complex economic system that's constantly evolving. This system has all sorts of pieces that control how it functions. It has goals, decision makers, rules, information and material flows. It has positive and negative feedback loops. It has incentives and taxes and so on, all kinds of things. Derived from all this is a way of thinking about technology that's allowed incredible scale, growth, and new capabilities. But that same thinking has also caused a lot of harm. And what I'm referring to is what we call the broken paradigm of extractive technology. So these are ideas like give users what they want. You may have heard a bunch of these. Technology is neutral. We've always had moral panics. Maximize personalization. Who are we to choose? Grow at all costs. Obsess over metrics. And capture attention, the fundamental unit of life, because it's the gateway to growth. We first saw this kind of thing in the realm of social media, and much of it is showing up again now in the race to deploy AI as fast as possible. And actually, versions of this show up with other technology and in other industries too. And part of the challenge is that technology actually exports the mindset of its creators through its products, through its interfaces, through the choices that are made, and the way that those products affect society. There's other talks I give where I go into much more detail on that. I think it's really interesting. But when you put it all together, this type of thinking, combined with an economic system that's oriented towards constant growth, creates dangerous races in every industry. Competition, of course, can be beneficial, but it can also become maladaptive, and it can devolve into races to the bottom. So these are where competitors engage in harmful behavior, not because they want to, but because they will lose otherwise. So you may hear this term multipolar trap, right? In the AI space, this comes up. This is when you can either choose to continue playing the game that's harmful, or you can bow out and lose the potential rewards while others continue to play. And this kind of dynamic means that even people who are well-meaning end up trapped inside this misaligned incentive landscape. And that's what that slide that I showed earlier is all about. It's about how to break out of those kinds of traps. And as you can see from that slide, it's not simple, right? There's a lot you have to do that. And these traps are everywhere. Fast food companies are competing to addict us to fat and sugar. Social media companies race to extract and monetize our attention. AI companies compete to capture market share, even though we don't have answers to the questions that they raise. So, for example, the deep fakes in elections, the fake robocalls, or any of these, like deep fakes, deep fake pornography, all of these examples, we don't have good answers to these. And there's a whole bunch of misaligned incentives that create this downward spiral to misaligned technology. These aren't in any particular order, but I want to emphasize a few. One is systemic accountability, right? No matter what your role, You're accountable to your boss and then their boss and their boss, and eventually the CEO and the board, right? And the shareholders. And this is how it works. So even whoever you put in the CEO spot, whether they're a good person or not, or whatever moral system they might use, they have to fight those pressures. And most of the time, they won't even get the job, right? Because the people who are hiring know that they won't execute according to what's needed and what the imperatives are. So that's just important to keep in mind. Then there's the usual stuff: money, power, social status, recognition, right? These are self-explanatory. People underestimate competition. A good CEO gets their team to orient in a competition against the enemy, right? Against the opponent. And they channel this inner drive to win. And most of the people who get those jobs are very competitive. Like they've done well, right? And that's how they got the job. So it's very effective. The thrill of discovery is another one people underestimate when they ask questions like, why can't they just do the right thing? Well, these are all reasons why people don't do the right thing. And the thrill of discovery is a big one. Imagine if you are creating technology that is like living beings and they can do all kinds of cool stuff. Like, it's really confusing. So I just want to emphasize that, like, it's exciting and people double down on that, and they kind of focus their lives on those discoveries. And then there's cultural conditioning. Like, what have people learned from the culture around them, but also from their upbringing? What are the holes in their psychology, right? The kind of the dark side of their psychology that's driving them to achieve certain kinds of behavior or certain kinds of goals. This is the stuff everyone really should look at, but they normally never do, right? A lot of CEOs need to look at this stuff. We like to quote this: show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. This is from Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's late business partner. The last thing I want to talk about is just the incentive structures, again, in a little more detail. In our economic system, I think we all know price is set according to supply and demand. The amazing thing is that this simple method, centered on price, allows all sorts of complex coordination between actors in the system. It allows for efficient resource allocation, right? If price has the right information in it, it allows efficient resource allocation. It folds in consumer preferences, resource scarcities, dangers, right? Harms about products, technological possibilities, and it's dynamic. It allows for adjustments as circumstances change. And this approach has brought us all sorts of progress, right? Healthier lifespans, food, clothing, shelter, information, virtual intelligence, connection. You can make a strong case that our current economic system has brought more people out of poverty than any alternative. And so if we look at how innovation works in the economic system, right, companies compete to provide the best products for consumers at low prices. This is a super simplified explanation, but it's to make a point. They produce the products by turning resources into products. Those resources can be ecological, like plants or animals or minerals, or human, like ideas, labor, and attention. As companies compete, there's this constant push for efficiency and scale. So they look for opportunities to produce goods faster and cheaper. And that leads to innovation, but it also leads to the extraction of ecological and human resources. Now, that type of extraction can be okay, especially if the resources are kept in a healthy state where they can regenerate. But when competition and extraction happen too quickly, they can cause harms to individuals and communities and ecosystems. So we try to set up rules to make sure competition doesn't harm important parts of society. And if companies do cause harm, or they do illegal things like sabotaging competitors, the companies are penalized. It's always been tricky to set these rules up correctly because we want to reward innovation while protecting society. And that is a delicate balance. And the challenge in recent times is that our technology is accelerating much faster than we can understand its implications. So we can't keep the rules of competition adequately updated. And that means new harms end up on society's balance sheet. When rapidly advancing technology supercharges competition and extraction, we run into big problems. And that's what's different now. You end up with catastrophic risk, right? Where the rules of the game can't keep up. We are operating at scales that are destroying the ecological, physical, mental, and social foundations that humanity relies on, without allowing those foundations to regenerate. And we are creating massive levels of inequality in that process. So what we have to do is to connect harms back to profits. This is like the basic principle. If you want to think about, there's that escaping the trap, like the big set of stuff. And then there's this very practical set of things that we can do with social media or AI inside of the current system that can help. Legislation, set the right rules, right? Keep up with our technology, set requirements like quarterly earnings have to include the number of people harmed in various categories, right? Make those things visible. You got to have litigation to enforce the rules. That brings the cost of the harms physically back, right, on the balance sheets. That can be done by governments or private parties. And some of the value here is even in the discovery process and the bad PR that companies get in the process. Internal materials can become public. That all helps. Public pressure, large public awareness campaigns, movement building, media, all of these can produce reputational harm and decrease demand for products. Product design, obviously, right? We can do better on product design. And actually, a lot of times technologists know how to do that. They just run into pressure from the business sides of the companies. But there are changes that you can make there. And those address fixes at the source. Because if those fixes stop harms from happening, many different types of harm. So instead of catching all the harms after they've happened, you can fix it at the source. But this can't happen without help from all of the other pieces. Research. We need to figure out what the effects of products are. We need to quantify the harms that are happening. And researchers need access to data, a lot of times from companies, in order to do this effectively. And because that's hard, whistleblowing becomes one of the big levers, right? Because that's how this insider information, where someone's breaking the law and doing harm, doesn't come out without the help of whistleblowers. So thank you to the brave whistleblowers who have helped solve some of these problems and create ammunition. The last thing I want to mention is we need to redefine the word innovation, right? This is the dictionary definition, the Merriam-Webster. Innovation is the introduction of something new. It's a very weak definition. I think we need to change that and say innovation is the introduction of something new if it is beneficial to society. This is like one of the places we go wrong all the time because we pit the word innovation against the word ethics, and they're not at odds. Like, we're just defining the word innovation wrong. So lastly, I want to mention our awesome podcast, Your Undivided Attention. If you want to learn more about all these topics, please do check it out. I think it'll be really helpful. And a lot of the ideas we talked about here are discussed in more detail in our free course called Foundations of Humane Technology. You can go to the webpage, and the video and slides are freely available. You don't even have to register for the course. Just click on what you want to watch or see. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time and attention. Happy to take some questions. I will stop the screen share now. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent. Well, I'd like first to invite Father Fredericks and Dr. Capra and Dr. Banerji and Dr. Hagelin, if he's still here, if they may be willing to check in on this, as well as Jack Kornfield and Trudy Goodman. So I'd like you all to put your thinking caps on, and I will ask the first question. And it's a little bit, again, a segue to our last session that will follow. And I'm wondering, you're on the board of Spirit Rock. I think that there is some intimations that you have something of a meditation practice.
Yes.
And that you have, by using the word mindful, sort of tipped ahead in that direction. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about that with us.
What aspect?
Just how your practice integrates into your work.
Sure. Well, I think with this kind of stuff, actually, I think when you deal with this scale and scope of problem, it's kind of intimidating, right? And it can be depressing, can provoke anxiety, and this is where some kind of personal, like mental development practice or spiritual practices. There's two aspects. One is development of equanimity, which I think is really helpful. Gosh, it's so distracting to see myself in the thing. Let me see. Can I not have myself? It's okay. I'll just stare at my. It's on delay also, so you just sort of see yourself doing things afterwards.
Can we do sprinkle screens?
It's okay. It's okay. I'll use my mindfulness. It's fine. It's you really have to have, right, both of these aspects. You have to have a mental development, and then the other piece, which is a larger picture, right? The kind of the big picture view of all this, because you can just get dragged into all of the details and all of the news of every week, and there's some scary stuff. So let me talk about both of those. So one is development of equanimity, which is something we value a lot in the mindfulness world, right? And so you can do breathing practices, you can do, people will have different ways of doing that based on their background, but I think something to cultivate that is very important. Experiencing stillness at like moderate doses is important to do that. Like 5 minutes won't get you what you need, but sitting and being in stillness and letting your body regulate and having that as an anchor you can come back to is very valuable. So there's that. And then the other piece is just the bigger picture and being in touch with, like I say, the harms that people experience. But also talking about, there's many choices, but just the things like, how do I be a better person, or how do I work on my mind, or listening to talks about things you care about in the spiritual realm are really helpful because they put these other objects into a little bit of a smaller box rather than the biggest box. You always want to have the biggest box be something more wholesome, I think. And a last thing I'll say is people often ask about, it looks grim, right? So how do you keep positive? How do you do it? And for me, one of the things that is really helpful is this lens of reducing suffering. There is a lot of suffering in the world, and I don't know how it's all going to play out. Right? These are very complex systems. Some of the predictions that might seem obvious to me might be wrong. It might go really well. There's all this stuff. But what I do know is that I can see some immediate harms happening, and even addressing those, there's a lot of goodness there, right? There's a lot of value in that. And so working on that gives me a lot of kind of motivation and agency. And I think we all have that. We all have some realm where we can do that. And then in aggregate, yeah, we need very large levels of coordination, and there's a lot there. It's complicated. But it helps to think about reducing suffering in whatever way that we have access to. And that gives me hope, even if it doesn't matter that we necessarily fix everything overall. That doesn't stop me from making a contribution now. And that gives me a lot of peace of mind. And the last thing, I learned a lot in the work we've done. There's this humility where you make a plan and it goes differently from what you expect. And in some ways, the complexity of these problems actually helps you be less attached to ideas or solving it immediately, because you just realize it's really hard. And you're just going to throw in some conditions into a box that's full of conditions. and maybe your contribution will help in some way, and that's all you can really do. You try and make good contributions, right? You think carefully about what you're going to contribute. You use the resources you have to make the best contribution you are positioned to make. But you
Okay, we have a question.
yes,
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And of course, it's extremely alarmist, right?
it's
when
hard
you
not to be. Yes,
yeah, well, you said that the 40% of jobs could be in danger, you know, as in as soon as 18 months, even, right? So of course,
so I would say 40% in the 18 months. I'm just saying we will reach the beginnings of like really material like changes, and then the actual number will be rolling out from that period onwards quite rapidly. Again, a lot of it's happening already, so it's not. It's already started.
right. So of course, I mean, immediately we think about how the English editor may just go away simply because you just
Yes,
put
totally.
you know any essay into any chat GPT or whichever Pi AI or any other
Yes.
AI service and it just edit for you. But and along with that, perhaps you know language teachers in the future. But what are some of the in your opinion will be the most impacted professions, and what professions besides AI engineers will be have the most to gain in the future? Thank you.
Yeah. It's a little bit hard to predict, but some that seem obvious to me, yeah, like English grammar, English writing, those kinds of things, like just pure writing, like copy editors, right? So I've worked on books and I've benefited from amazing copy editors who they, by the way, when you read a well-written book, the copy editor probably has a lot to do with it, and they make authors look really good, right? Like you have mastery of the English language. Um, there's a lot of exposure in like that kind of domain. Um, Poetry, writing, a lot of the creative arts. So this is an interesting thing where we thought creativity would be the hardest thing, right, to displace, and it turns out it was the first, one of the first things. So forms of writing, drawing, especially, and it's really painful, right? Like people who got like trained those muscles in the hand to paint in this beautiful way. The ones with strong reputation, where humans would go to that human for like the human version, like the human art, and they value that and they put money on it, they'll be okay. But the ones without strong reputation, I think are going to have, is going to be really hard, right? Because the computer generated version sort of achieves what you wanted. Because there's two things you might want. You might want a human generated piece of art, or you just might want the picture. If you just want the picture, the AI is great, right? It'll do it and it'll customize it just the way you want, and you can do many rounds of iteration. And the human takes a long time to do that. And if you want to pay for that labor, it's going to be expensive. So there's stuff like that. Music, a lot of exposure. And again, now increasingly, right, in the video space, like short form video or video editors, right? People who take like stock video or stock images and add them to other people's work and help in that way. A lot of exposure there. And it makes me sad because I know people, right, who do these things. And increasingly as the video part gets good, imagine, right, like custom entertainment content, right? You won't have to watch the stuff that someone else made. You can sort of make it for yourself. You can have it make a type of like TV show that you like. You can have a movie that flows the way you like, and that can be done in lots of different ways, including stitching pieces that are in different permutations, right? Pre-existing pieces that are in permutations. That's actually how Sora works, right? The new video technology. Part of it is it stitches little segments together to make larger segments. And it customizes each of those little segments too. So there's all of that. A lot of exposure there. A lot of exposure in data analysis. I mean, this is just a long list, but exposure in data analysis, right? People who used to do, so in consulting, right? Consulting is a broad field of highly paid people. And the model there is like the expensive people tell the slightly less expensive people, the junior people, to do these kinds of tasks that now AI can take on. So there's a lot of exposure there. stuff like that, right? It's everywhere. Analyzing Excel spreadsheets, financial analysis. AI is quite good at all those things. So how about the best? Well, what is safest? There's a few different things there. There's like people who work with AI, of course. I think that the humane technologist, the humane policymaker, the people who think along the lines that we are trying to share, right? We're always trying to teach people. We got to do it right? So these kind of social scientists who can help with that, I think these are very valuable professions.
Very good, very good. We have a question from Fritjof Capra.
Sorry, let me just add one more thing, because it's really important. The human touch is really important, right? The jobs that have real human touch, human interaction, caring for older people, caring for young people. I think there's a lot of value on those jobs. Traditionally, they don't have high salaries, right? And yet they will become extremely important and hard to automate. But because of supply and demand, there'll be many people competing for those jobs. It makes it hard for there's pricing pressure there, right? It sucks. So this is kind of how I see it. Again, asterisks on all of this, but that's the logic that takes me to the conclusions.
Hi, I'm Fritjof Capra. I really enjoyed your movie. I saw only 15 minutes, but I'm going to watch it all. And in my work, I promote systems thinking and the systems view of the world.
Great.
And I spent a lot of time analyzing the world's major problems and realizing that they're all systemic problems, all interconnected and interdependent. And at the bottom of it, I find this obsession with quantitative economic growth, which you also mentioned in your talk.
Yes.
And it's an illusion, because it should be obvious that infinite quantitative growth is impossible on a finite planet. Now, all the harmful effects produced by AI that you mentioned are a little more subtle, but just to think about climate change, for instance, or the COVID pandemic, or economic inequality, all of this is driven by this obsession with economic growth, which is grotesque. It's an absurd illusion. And yet, most of our economists, corporate and political, adhere to that. How do you talk to them? Have you attempted to point this out?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two things here. One is working inside of the system we have. This is why I bring up that slide, right, with the bring costs back on the balance sheets, right? That's like the current system method of addressing that. And then there's questions about, how are we measuring in the first place, right? Is centering on GDP as like a single value optimization, right? It's like the ultimate single value optimization.
Right.
Is that the right thing? And there are alternatives where we can do better. I think these are complex conversations, but changing the system, like GDP, for example, would be a very interesting, like, one step forward in a simple way.
Yes, and there are many proposals around that do that.
Right, exactly. And so I think just introducing that as a concept, I think there's a lot of time that has to be spent showing people how the way we do it actually does break down, because we can't keep the rules up with the rate of technological advancement. The same, a lot of them, I'd say maybe all the major problems have the same roots, as you said. And so in some ways, technology is the easiest teaching tool for it, because people feel that one very concretely. Climate change is very hard, because you look out the window, and on the day when the weather's good, you're kind of happy that it's like a nice warm day. And so it's just confusing, right? It sort of comes into contact with you when there's a flood, when there's a fire. And then when it's gone, you don't feel it. You don't feel it the same way. So it's hard to keep the kind of motivation that's needed to, like, perpetually solve the problems. And technology is a great tool for teaching in that way. So I try to do that whenever I get a chance.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for that very, very enlightening talk, I'd say. Extremely. My name is Debashish Banerji, and I wanted to actually piggyback on Chris's question, because mindfulness and things like that have grown a lot in our times, but they're not being linked to the recapturing of attention, which is being targeted, as you pointed out. Most people are linking it more to things like leading a stress-free life. I mean, the ethical connotations of mindfulness are not being emphasized. There are other issues related to the subjective life. Well, what can we do as individuals to reclaim our agency? That's not really being addressed. We're looking at legislation, which is all very important.
Yes.
But where is the individual, and what can the individual do? Jim Fredericks pointed out what Hannah Arendt says, that people who are lonely become more susceptible to becoming targeted. People who don't have a purpose in life are given a purpose in life, which takes them towards the lowest, as you pointed out, the base of the stem, of the brain stem.
Yeah, that's right.
So how can we address the issue of the individual and what they can do to not become target to these forces?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. It's an important question. I would say individually, you can do a lot for yourself, but not for the system. That is the cold, hard truth. There's no point saying anything else, right? Like there is, and I think every individual, right? And so what you can do is, for example, if you are doing, if you're running an organization that teaches mindfulness at scale, you are then teaching more people, right, to kind of protect their attention, develop their equanimity, things like that. But it doesn't do much for the system, because there's this really, again, sad truth that ethics are beaten out by incentives, like every time. And it sucks, but that's the world we have. So you have to sort of look at that as you try to fix it. And so individual agency is a tough one, right? Because individuals, this is what happened, right? So Social Dilemma is a perfect example. 100 million people saw the film. Probably maybe even 1 million of them left social media for a bit at one point, and then most of them kind of came back on in various forms. But even if 1 million people leave social media, it doesn't do anything, because there are 1 billion users, right? There's 2 billion users on Facebook. So just to understand, right, kind of the scale of these problems and how we have to take a systemic lens, which means looking honestly at what drives the features of the system. And unfortunately, like ethical qualities don't drive much of the systems at all. Sucks. But that's why I always go back to this, like, you got to put the harms back on the balance sheets in the current system, because that's how it works. Now you want highly ethical people designing, doing the systemic analysis and saying, hey, what do we need to change in the system? That's where you want, right? That's why these investments are very, very important. Training people in mindfulness, especially people who are powerfully positioned in the system, that is very strategic. And that actually addresses the system in the way that the system operates. So that's what I would say. And then there's the individual lens of lots of things you can do to reclaim your agency. Like, the usual stuff, right? Don't be on social media, control your habits. Like, there are quite a few things you can do, traps you can look out for, right, in the realm of using your devices and basically your exposure combined with your training. But we have to remember that the training with the phone is for many people, it'll be minimum 6 hours, probably many more, right? Hours per day. And the training of the mindfulness, the seated practice or the walking practice or whatever it is that you do, most people will do under 30 minutes, right? So that you have to be realistic about what you are pitting against what. That's part of the problem. And so the same thing comes up with questions around children, right? People ask this all the time. In classrooms, we are thrilled, right? If children can sit for 10 minutes, 15 minutes is like you are celebrating, right, when you pull that off. And it's hard to do. And then they go and they are absolutely, the average time that a teen is on social media now is 4.8 hours per day. So, and think about that process, right? So that's why I mentioned the training process, the conditioning process. This is the way to view, everything, right, in life, but it's really helpful for viewing social media or AI, or like what happens and what do we need to undo, right, to get out. That lens is very instructive.
Okay, we have a question from Father Jim Fredericks, who spoke this morning and gave a really brilliant overview. He's consulting with the legislature in Sacramento on what is needed.
Great.
First of all, thank you for the documentary. Okay, this is okay. Having said that, I also have to ask, what have you done for us lately?
A lot happening. Can't comment
Hang on,
all.
I just want to say quickly, we're coming to the time when you need to do another documentary specifically on artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And I doubt if I'm the first one that's had this idea. Okay, so keep up the good work, and we're looking for big things in the future now. Okay.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it has to be commensurate to the problem, and there's work being done. There are actually a lot of documentaries that are kind of in flux, and we are going to be involved in let's say where it makes sense. And we're also, I gave a big government presentation yesterday, and doing, really, we have our teams are involved in all kinds of things. We're not the only ones, right? There's a huge responsible AI, like a whole bunch of nonprofits that are working on these problems. It's a big one, and we need a
Let me just say
response.
quickly, I also have a question.
Yes.
The question has to do, it's more of a personal question for myself, but it has to do with practice. I'm working with a teenager, actually two teenagers, who have been damaged by social media.
Yeah.
And I'm angry about that.
Yes.
And frankly, I think I should be angry about that.
Yes.
And then I think of my years of experience with friendships with Buddhists. Working with anger, a complex question for both Christians and Buddhists. I repeat, I am angry, and I think I should be angry. And what should I do with my anger that's really, shall we say, skillful?
Anger is a tough one. You can ask Jack too. I'll give my thoughts on it. I think with every emotion we have to accept, or we have to accept the conditions. Those are real, right? The conditions that make you angry are real. Sometimes the narrative that repeats in the mind that gives fuel to that anger is not so skillful. And so I think channeling more of the energy to like, what are we going to do going forward about it, can be very skillful. Yeah, I mean, anger in particular is like such a strong emotion, and when you see these kinds of situations happening, it's hard not to be angry. It's hard not to be anxious, and part of it is accepting that it is happening, right? Like we can't. The biggest mistake is to try and avoid it or try and bury it or something like that. Over time, I think it has conditions just like everything else. It does pass, its intensity changes, but putting our energy into a positive thing that we can do, in response to that, I think is often the most skillful thing. And repeating the narrative that made us angry is often like a less skillful thing, is what I would say.
Beautiful. Baidea, did you have? Okay, so we have another question from Baidea here.
Hi, my name is Baidea Baker. I am a technologist and work with technology for my whole life. I'm self-taught. I'm currently using AI and understanding how to use AI, given that my field is changing and I have no other choice, but also because I'm terribly fascinated with it.
Yeah.
A comment on a question earlier is that the fields that will be most impacted are the fields that don't adopt technology. That was true when it was faxes. It's true with telephone. It's true with internet, and now it's true with AI. So your job is at risk if you don't adopt AI. That's just the world now we live in. Another brilliant comment was about the quantitative growth problem and how it's impossible and grotesque to achieve and ultimately burns us out. How do you see the government regulations role and the corporate regulations role in affecting the negative potential outcomes of AI as it is upon us?
What do you mean by corporate regulations as different from government regulations?
Well, we're seeing explosive growth in private sector that has nothing to do with, in fact, just influences the state.
Oh, you mean like regulatory capture?
So, well, in regulation being one of the answers to help us deal with
yes,
unhealthy growth or unhealthy use of AI, you can't just assume that the state, which can't keep up with technology in general, to do it. So in that case, it's left to the corporate entities who are seeking profits in it. And so what
I
role?
see what you're saying. Okay.
Whose job is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's this actually, it opens up a deeper question, right, about sort of like, what do you trust? And it turns out it's quite a polarizing topic because there's people who trust the government and people who don't trust the government and would rather trust corporations, right? And it's a somewhat religious war, right? People get very religious about that. Fundamentally, I think our economic system really does rely on the government setting the right rules, and corporations can propose different versions of it. And I think what we have to do is to what we've tried to do. So, for example, with the executive order, right, the presidential executive order, they tried to set a few things that are that don't change as fast, right? Like, so, okay, set some kind of compute limit. There are now those you can argue, right, on the effectiveness of those, but there are some rules you can set that can at least bound the near-term future, so you have a little time to figure out what's going on. And I think we need a more agile way of making regulations. So maybe smaller rules that we pass faster, as an example. Principles-based, like design-based rules work better than harms-based rules, in the sense that they solve problems at their source, as opposed to trying to solve problems like a myriad different problems, right, at the end. A lot of times we end up trying to set rules for harms at the end because that's the only way we can bring costs back on balance sheets. So it's all very complicated, but I do think more agile governance should be a big goal, and that's something I'm going to emphasize in the conversations that I have. I just think when you compare the way technology companies innovate with the way we regulate, it becomes very obvious. So it's like, okay, there's a design question of how can we be more transparent and adaptive and responsive in our regulations. And yeah, I think there are challenges, of course, with lobbyists and regulatory capture, and it's just it's a big space. But those are some quick thoughts on it.
We have a question from an engineering professor, and we're going to have to wrap it up.
Yes.
Yes, my question, you mentioned that learning mindfulness doesn't change, it's good for ourselves, but doesn't change the system. And that's right. But you're saying, yeah, educating people who are at the leadership level, that type mindfulness is going to change the system or impact the system. You also mentioned that AI is going to probably replace some of the analysts, big analysts, the big complex system engineers, right? In some cases, but as it grows. So is there a way to train AI to be responding in a more mindful or So it changes the system, the way it responds and provides solution. So
Okay. Interesting. So a few things, just the point I made about the individual and the system. In some ways, you can access like a smaller number of VIPs or a very large number of people who have enough access. It's just really hard to do the latter. If you can, great, like it works. It's just really hard to do with these systems. In terms of AI and its effect inside systems, the more complex the system, the harder it is to just use an AI, right? So for example, AI is really good at coding small problems, like a toy problem, it'll start to do very well. If you start to use it to write code inside of a large code base where it doesn't understand the relationships between different parts of the code base, it won't do as well, right? So that's an example where unless you train it on like all of that, but simple deployment doesn't work as well. So people who are doing complex, interdependent systems that have like, historical knowledge that only a few people know, right? Those kinds of things are not as exposed to AI. And then your core question, which is about can AI sort of help change the system as it works? It depends on what goals it's given to optimize for, right? And this is one of the big questions. Systems thinking is all about looking at what are the forces, like if you have this thing, right, this piece of technology, what forces above it control that thing? And then what forces above that control that thing? And what forces above, right? You keep doing that process. And most of these technologies are landing in a fairly small part of that big system, which is why they're governed by that system and the system's goals. So when you have companies that are like optimizing, right, for revenue, for example, or profit, it's not likely that they're going to deploy AI in a way that is going to like do something different. It's optimizing for revenue, right? And or the system above it is optimizing for revenue. In theory, you could have a complex AIs that will actually look at the whole system and start to make some recommendations or find solutions maybe we haven't thought of. It's very, very difficult and complicated because it needs to understand the whole big system and all of the little pieces inside that function, together. And in some ways, like the changes to the systems are not like we know what we have to do. Some of these things become social problems, they become movement building problems, they become cultural problems, right? Those are a lot of times there's a social layer that all of this is built on that we have to change as well.
Well, I want to thank the very attentive and mindful people in the room. I want to thank you for the excellent work of the Center for Humane Technology. As Father Fredericks said, we're indebted to you for that remarkable film, which really awakened so many of us to these pressing issues. And we will all check in. We're going to promise to Google Center for Humane Technology, do a workshop or two, and think about what we can do in our own lives to be part of the solution. So again, I want to thank you for your fine presentation and for your attentive devotion to us. And again, thank the people in the room as well. So
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Great questions too.